It was a Tuesday afternoon at the Willowbrook Country Club, and the sun was shining like it had no idea what was about to happen. Richard Langford stood at the front entrance in his pressed navy blazer, arms crossed, watching the young black man in the valet uniform walk toward him. The young man's name was Marcus Reed. He had worked at the club for almost 3 years. He was always on time. He always smiled. He never caused trouble. But today, Langford was not in the mood for smiles. A shiny black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Langford snapped his fingers without looking at Marcus. "Keys," he said sharply. Marcus stepped forward, took the keys from the driver with both hands, and gave a small nod. "Good afternoon, sir." He turned to walk the car to the parking area, like he always did, but before he could take 3 steps, Langford's voice cut through the air. "I said give me the keys." Marcus stopped. He looked confused for a second, then held the keys out. Langford didn't take them. Instead, he grabbed Marcus's wrist, snatched the keys from his hand, and with one hard throw, tossed them straight into the large stone fountain in front of the club. The keys hit the water with a loud splash. For a moment, everything went quiet. 2 members standing near the entrance turned to look. A woman near the door covered her mouth. The water in the fountain kept moving, but Marcus just stood there, staring at the ripples where his keys had disappeared. Langford's face was tight with anger. "You think you can just walk around here like you belong?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is a country club, not some street corner. Next time, you wait until I tell you what to do. You understand me?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked at the fountain, then back at Langford. His face didn't show anger. It didn't show embarrassment either. It was calm, too calm. "Yes, sir," he said quietly. Langford stepped closer, his voice lower now, but still sharp. "I've seen the way you look at the members, like you're better than this job, like you're something special." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're a valet. That's all you are. And if you don't like it, you can leave right now." Marcus stood still for another second. Then he gave a small nod, turned around, and walked toward the fountain without saying another word. He rolled up his sleeves, stepped into the cold water, and started feeling around the bottom with his hands. The water came up to his knees. His uniform pants were getting soaked, but he didn't complain. He didn't rush. He just kept searching, quietly, like this was something he had done before. From the entrance, Langford watched him with a satisfied look on his face. But what Langford didn't know was this. 3 people inside the club had seen everything. One of them was an old man sitting by the window in the lounge. He hadn't touched his coffee in the last 2 minutes. He was just watching Marcus in the fountain. And for the first time in a long time, Harlan Whitaker, the owner of Willowbrook Country Club, looked worried, because he knew something that Richard Langford didn't. He knew exactly who Marcus Reed really was, and he knew that throwing those keys into the fountain was the biggest mistake Langford had made in years. Marcus came home late that night. His shoes were still wet from the fountain, and his uniform pants had dark water stains up to his knees. He walked quietly into the small house on Maple Street, trying not to wake his grandmother. But Eleanor Reed was already sitting in her old wooden chair by the window, waiting for him like she always did. She was 70 years old now, and her hands didn't work the way they used to. Arthritis had made her fingers stiff and painful. Still, every night she waited for Marcus to come home. "You're late," she said softly. Marcus didn't answer right away. He took off his wet shoes at the door and placed them neatly on the mat. Then, he walked over and kissed her on the forehead. "Had some work to finish," he said. Eleanor looked at his wet pants and the tired look in his eyes. She had raised this boy since he was 6 years old. She knew when he was lying. "What happened?" she asked. Marcus sat down on the small couch across from her. For a moment, he just stared at the floor. Then he told her everything. How Langford threw the keys into the fountain, how everyone watched, and how he had to step into the cold water to find them. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You didn't say anything back to him?" Marcus shook his head. "No, ma'am. Why not?" He looked up at her. His voice was calm, but there was something heavy behind it. "Because if I start talking back, I'll lose the job. And if I lose the job, we lose this house. And if we lose this house, he didn't finish the sentence. Eleanor knew what he meant. The medical bills were already too much. Her medicine, the rent, the groceries, it all came from Marcus's salary. He had given up everything for her. She reached out and touched his hand. "You remember what your mother used to say?" she asked. Marcus smiled a little. "She said I was born with a golf club in my hand." Eleanor nodded. She wasn't lying. By the time you were 12, you could read a green better than most men twice your age. By 15, coaches from the university were calling the house. "You had a gift, Marcus." A real one. Marcus didn't say anything. He just looked down at his hands. He used to love the game, not just playing it, teaching it. He was only 19 when he started coaching young kids at a small golf academy on the other side of town. The kids loved him. Parents said he had patience that most coaches didn't. He was good at explaining things simply. He made the game feel easy. But then Eleanor got sick. The doctors said she needed full-time care. Marcus looked at the bills and looked at his dream, and he made his choice. He left the academy. He stopped coaching. He took the valet job at Willowbrook Country Club because it paid more and had health insurance. He never told anyone at the club about his past. Not the members. Not the other staff. Not even Langford. To them, he was just the quiet black valet who parked cars and carried bags. But every weekend, when the members played on the course, Marcus watched from a distance. He saw their swings. He saw their mistakes. And in his mind, he would quietly correct them. He knew exactly what they were doing wrong. Sometimes, late at night, he would take an old golf club from under his bed, the only one he still dock, and practice his swing in the backyard under the streetlight. Just for a few minutes. Just to remember who he used to be. Eleanor watched him now, sitting on the couch with wet pants and tired eyes. "You can't keep doing this forever," she said, "hiding who you are, pretending you're just a valet." Marcus stood up and walked to the kitchen. He poured her a glass of water and brought it back. "I'm not hiding," he said. "I'm protecting what matters." He handed her the glass and gave her a small smile. "As long as you're okay, I'm okay." Eleanor took the glass, but she didn't drink. She just looked at her grandson, the same boy who once had college coaches fighting over him, now standing in wet clothes because some manager decided to humiliate him in front of everyone. She felt something heavy in her chest, because she knew Marcus was lying. He wasn't okay. And deep down, she was scared that one day, the club would break something inside him that even she couldn't fix. The next morning, Marcus woke up before his alarm. He lay in bed for a few minutes, staring at the ceiling. His legs still felt cold from standing in the fountain the day before. He didn't want to go back, but he had no choice. He got up, ironed his uniform carefully, and made breakfast for his grandmother before leaving. Eleanor didn't say much while he was getting ready. She just watched him with worried eyes. "Be careful today," she said, as he kissed her goodbye. Marcus gave her a small smile. "I always am." When he reached Willowbrook Country Club, the parking lot was already half full. It was a busy day. Rich members were arriving for their morning rounds of golf, their expensive cars shining under the sun. Marcus parked them one by one, opening doors with a polite smile and a quiet, "Good morning, sir," or "Good morning, ma'am." Most members didn't even look at him. To them, he was just part of the background, like the trees or the fountain. They handed him their keys without making eye contact and walked straight into the club. But some people did look. Two other valets, both younger than Marcus, stood near the entrance talking in low voices. When Marcus walked past them, they stopped talking. One of them gave him a quick, nervous nod. The other looked away. Everyone had heard about what happened yesterday. Inside the club, Richard Langford was already at his desk, near the front window. He was watching Marcus through the glass, like a hawk watching its prey. Every time Marcus brought a car around, Langford's eyes followed him. Marcus felt it, but he didn't show it. He kept his face calm. He did his job the same way he always did. Quiet, fast, and respectful. Around 10:30, a young white man in his mid-20s pulled up in a silver BMW. His name was Tyler Brooks. He was one of the newer members. Unlike most of the others, Tyler always said thank you when Marcus took his keys. Today, Tyler looked at Marcus for a second longer than usual. "You okay?" he asked quietly, as he handed over the keys. Marcus was surprised. Most members never asked him anything personal. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied with a small nod. "I'm fine." Tyler hesitated, like he wanted to say something else, but then just gave a short nod and walked inside. Marcus parked the car and walked back to his spot near the entrance. As he stood there, he watched a group of older men on the practice range. One of them was struggling badly with his swing. His shoulders were too tight, and he was coming over the top every time. Marcus watched for a few seconds. In his mind, he could already see what the man needed to fix. Relax the grip. Drop the right shoulder. Let the club fall naturally. But of course, he said nothing. He just stood there, with his hands behind his back, like a perfect valet should. Around lunchtime, Langford finally stepped outside. He walked straight up to Marcus. Two other staff members were nearby, pretending to be busy, but clearly listening. Langford stopped in front of him and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Reed," he said. "From now on, you don't touch any member's car unless I personally tell you to. You stand here. You wait. You don't move unless I say so. Is that clear?" Marcus looked at him calmly. "Yes, sir." Langford leaned in a little closer. "And if I ever see you acting like you're better than this job again," he said in a low voice, "I'll make sure you don't work at any club in this city, not even as a janitor. Understood?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Understood, sir." Langford stared at him for a few more seconds, then turned and walked back inside. Marcus stayed standing in his spot. The sun was hot, and his uniform was starting to stick to his back. But he didn't move. He just kept his eyes forward, quiet and still. What Langford didn't throw was that someone had been watching the whole conversation from the second-floor window. Harlan Whitaker, the owner of the club, stood there with a cup of coffee in his hand. He had seen everything. Langford's threats, Marcus's calm response, and the way the other staff looked at Marcus with pity. Whitaker took a slow sip of his coffee and spoke quietly to himself. "You have no idea who you're talking to, Langford," he muttered. Then he turned away from the window, but the worried look on his face remained, because he knew that if Marcus ever decided to stop being quiet, things at Willowbrook Country Club were going to change very fast, and not in the way Langford expected. 2 days later, Richard Langford called Marcus into his office. Marcus stood in front of the desk, with his hands behind his back. Langford didn't even look up from his papers at first. He just kept writing. "Reed," he finally said. "One of our caddies called in sick today. You're filling in." Marcus stayed quiet. Langford looked up at him with a small, cold smile. "You'll be caddying for Mr. Brooks and his son today, all 18 holes. And I don't want to hear any complaints. If you do a good job, maybe I'll let you go back to parking cars tomorrow. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said. Langford leaned back in his chair. "And Reed, try not to embarrass the club. These are important members." Marcus didn't reply. He just nodded and left the office. An hour later, Marcus was standing on the first tee with a golf bag on his shoulder. It felt strange. He hadn't carried a bag in years. The weight was familiar, but the feeling in his chest was heavy. Tyler Brooks and his father, Mr. Edward Brooks, were already there. Edward Brooks was in his late 50s, loud, and clearly used to getting his way. Tyler looked uncomfortable. "New caddy?" Edward asked, looking Marcus up and down. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied politely. "My name is Marcus." Edward didn't bother introducing himself. He just waved his hand. "Let's go. I don't have all day." The round started badly. Edward Brooks played aggressively and got frustrated with every bad shot. He yelled at the ball. He blamed the wind. He blamed the grass. And every time Tyler hit a shot, his father had something negative to say. "Keep your head down. You're coming over the top again. Stop being so soft." Tyler's shoulders got tighter with every hole. By the 7th hole, he was playing worse than when he started. Marcus walked quietly behind them, carrying both bags. He didn't say a word unless someone asked him something, but he was watching everything. On the 9th hole, Tyler stood over a difficult approach shot. His grip was too tight. His stance was slightly off. Marcus could see exactly what was wrong. Tyler swung and sent the ball far right into the trees. Edward threw his hands up. Unbelievable. I paid for lessons, and this is what I get? Tyler didn't answer. He just looked down at the ground. As they walked toward the trees to find the ball, Tyler fell a few steps behind his father. Marcus walked beside him. Without looking at Tyler, Marcus spoke in a low, calm voice. Try relaxing your right hand a little, and drop your right shoulder on the backswing. You're blocking it. Tyler looked at him, surprised. Marcus kept his eyes forward, like he hadn't said anything. Tyler didn't reply, but on the next hole, Marcus noticed he adjusted his grip slightly. The shot wasn't perfect, but it was better. For the rest of the round, Marcus gave small, quiet suggestions whenever Edward wasn't paying attention. A small change in stance, a reminder to breathe. A simple swing thought. Tyler didn't say thank you out loud, but Marcus could see the difference. The young man started playing with less tension. By the 17th hole, Tyler was smiling for the first time all day. When the round finally ended, Edward Brooks handed Marcus a $20 bill without looking at him. Don't expect a tip every time, he said, then walked toward the clubhouse. Tyler stayed back for a moment. He looked at Marcus. You used to play, didn't you? He asked quietly. Marcus paused. Then he gave a small nod. A little, he said. Tyler studied him for a second, like he wanted to ask more. But then he just said, thanks, for today. Marcus watched him walk away. He stood there alone, on the 18th green for a moment, the 2 golf bags still on the ground beside him. The sun was starting to go down. Most of the members had already gone inside. Marcus picked up the bags and started walking back toward the clubhouse. What he didn't was that someone had been watching the entire round from the second-floor lounge. Harlan Whitaker had seen everything. The way Marcus quietly helped Tyler, the small corrections, the way Tyler's game improved. He had also seen the look on Marcus's face when he stood on the green alone at the end. Whitaker turned to the man standing next to him. Call Langford to my office, he said. Right now. Harlan Whitaker's office was on the second floor of the clubhouse. It was large, quiet, and had a big window that overlooked the 18th green. When Richard Langford walked in, Whitaker was already sitting behind his desk. Close the door, Whitaker said. Langford closed it and stood in front of the desk. He looked confident, but inside, he was already annoyed. You wanted to see me, sir? He asked. Whitaker didn't waste time. I saw what happened on the course yesterday, he said, with Reed carrying bags for the Brooks family. Langford shrugged. One of the caddies was sick. I needed someone to fill in. You also threatened him in front of the other staff 2 days ago, Whitaker said. And before that, you threw his keys into the fountain. Langford's face tightened. Sir, with all due respect, that boy has an attitude. He walks around here like he's better than the job. I was just putting him in his place. Whitaker looked at him for a long moment. Do you know anything about Marcus Reed's background? He asked. Langford frowned. He's a valet. That's all I need to know. Whitaker leaned forward. Before he came here, Marcus was coaching golf. He worked with young players. He was good, really good. Some people say he could have gone further, if life hadn't gotten in the way. Langford let out a short laugh. Coach? Him? He shook his head. Sir, I think someone's been lying to you. That boy parks cars. He carries bags. He's not a coach. Whitaker's voice stayed calm, but there was steel in it. I'm not asking you what you think, Richard. I'm telling you to leave him alone. No more threats. No more public humiliation. If I hear about anything else, we're going to have a serious problem. Langford's jaw clenched. He forced a smile. Understood, sir. But as he walked out of the office, his mind was racing. He felt embarrassed. He felt challenged. And most of all, he felt angry. That evening, Langford waited until most of the members had left the clubhouse. Then he called Marcus into the staff room near the parking area. 3 other workers were still there, cleaning up. Marcus walked in quietly. Langford was leaning against a table with his arms crossed. I had an interesting conversation today, Langford said loudly, so everyone could hear. Turns out our little valet here used to be a golf coach. Isn't that right, Reed? Marcus didn't answer. Langford smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Some people think you're some kind of hidden talent, that you're too good to be parking cars. He stepped closer. But I know the truth. You're just like the rest of them. You got some story, you came here looking for pity, and now you're walking around like you deserve respect. One of the other workers looked down at the floor. Another one shifted uncomfortably. Langford's voice got louder. Let me make something very clear. You are a valet. Nothing more. If I ever hear that you've been giving advice to members, or acting like you know more than you should, I will fire you on the spot. And I'll make sure no club within 50 miles hires you either. Marcus stood still. His face was calm, but his hands were clenched tightly behind his back. Langford stared at him for a few more seconds, then waved his hand. Get out of here. Marcus turned and walked out of the room without saying a word. He didn't go straight home. Instead, he walked to the far end of the parking lot and stood in the dark for a while, breathing slowly. His chest felt tight. He thought about his grandmother. He thought about the medical bills. He thought about how hard he had tried to stay invisible. But now, it didn't matter how quiet he was. Langford had made up his mind. Marcus was no longer just a valet to him. He was a threat. And Marcus knew that when a man like Richard Langford felt threatened, he didn't stop until he destroyed whatever was in his way. Marcus didn't go straight home after work that night. He walked around the neighborhood for almost an hour, trying to clear his head. Langford's words kept playing in his mind. You are a valet. Nothing more. By the time he reached the house, it was already dark. Eleanor was sitting in her chair, waiting like always. When she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. Sit down, she said gently. Marcus sat on the couch and told her everything. How Langford had found out about his past, how he threatened him in front of the other workers, and how he said he would make sure no other club would hire him. Eleanor listened quietly. When he finished, she reached out and held his hand. Her fingers were stiff from arthritis, but her grip was still warm. You've been carrying too much for too long, she said. First your mother left. Then I got sick. You gave up your coaching job, your future, everything. And now this man wants to take even the little you have left. Marcus looked down at the floor. I can't lose this job, Grandma. We need the money. Your medicine. I know, she said, cutting him off softly. But there's a difference between being strong and being silent. Sometimes staying quiet doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for people to hurt you. Marcus didn't answer. He just sat there, tired. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Tyler Brooks came to the club early. He wasn't there to play golf. He was looking for Marcus. He found him near the parking area, cleaning a golf cart. Hey, Tyler said, can we talk for a minute? Marcus looked around to make sure no one was watching. I'm working right now, he said quietly. I know, Tyler replied. I won't take long. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. My father was wrong yesterday. The way he spoke to you, and the way Langford treats you. I saw what you did on the course. You helped me, without anyone asking you to. Most people here wouldn't do that. Marcus stayed silent. Tyler continued. I spoke to my dad last night. I told him how you helped me with my swing. He didn't believe me at first, but I showed him the difference in my score. Tyler paused. Look, I don't know your full story, but I know you're not just a valet, and I don't think it's right what they're doing to you. Marcus finally looked at him. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Because someone should, Tyler said, and because I think my father might listen if I push a little. He respects results. And you gave me results yesterday. Before Marcus could reply, Tyler's phone rang. He checked it and sighed. I have to go. But if Langford gives you any more trouble, come find me, okay? Marcus nodded slowly. Tyler gave him a small smile and walked away. Marcus stood there for a long time after he left. For the first time in days, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. That same afternoon, Harlan Whitaker made a phone call from his office. He spoke to someone for almost 20 minutes. When the call ended, he sat back in his chair and looked out at the golf course. Then he picked up the phone again and called his assistant. Get me everything we have on Marcus Reed, he said. His old coaching records, any articles, Anything. I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning. He hung up and stared out the window again. Time to stop hiding, you son, he said quietly to himself. Down in the parking lot, Marcus had no idea that the owner of the club was starting to move pieces behind the scenes, and Richard Langford had no idea that his control over Marcus Reed was about to be challenged in doubt. Marcus was at home when his phone rang. It was a number from the club. He almost didn't answer, but something told him he should. Hello? It was Harlan Whitaker's assistant. Mr. Reed, Mr. Whitaker would like you to come to the club this afternoon. It's important. He said it can't wait. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. When? He asked. 3 o'clock. In the main conference room, Marcus looked at the clock. It was already 1:40. He didn't have time to overthink it. He changed into a clean shirt, kissed his grandmother on the forehead, and left without telling her where he was going. When he reached the club, he was surprised to see several cars parked outside that usually didn't come on weekdays. Inside, the atmosphere felt different. Staff members were whispering. Some looked at him with curiosity, others looked away. At exactly 3 o'clock, Marcus was called into the large conference room on the second floor. Inside were 5 people. Harlan Whitaker sat at the head of the table. Richard Langford sat on the right side, looking tense. Tyler Brooks was there too, along with 2 older board members Marcus had never spoken to before. Whitaker gestured to an empty chair. Sit down, Marcus. Marcus sat. His heart was beating fast, but his face stayed calm. Whitaker opened a folder in front of him. I've spent the last 2 days learning about you, he said. Not just what you do here at the club. I mean, before you came here. Langford shifted in his seat, but didn't speak. Whitaker continued. You coached golf for almost 3 years. You worked with juniors. You had players who improved fast under you. One of them even made it to a college team with your help. He looked up. You were good, Marcus. Very good. Marcus didn't say anything. Whitaker closed the folder. 2 days ago, I asked Richard to stop treating you like dirt. He didn't listen. Instead, he humiliated you again, in front of other staff. Whitaker turned to Langford. Would you like to explain why? Langford's face was red. Sir, this is ridiculous, he said. He's a valet. I run the operations here. If I feel someone is not doing their job properly, it's my right to correct them. Whitaker's voice stayed calm, but it was cold. You didn't correct him, Richard. You tried to break him, and you did it because you felt threatened. Langford stood up. Threatened? By a valet? By a man who knows more about golf than most of the people you kiss up to every day, Whitaker replied. And instead of using that talent, you tried to bury it. The room went quiet. Whitaker looked back at Marcus. I'm not going to ask you to stay as a valet, he said. That would be a waste. I'm offering you a position as an assistant golf coach for our junior program, full-time, with proper pay and benefits. Marcus felt like the air had been knocked out of him. Langford slammed his hand on the table. You can't do that. The members won't accept it. A former valet teaching their kids? This will ruin the reputation of this club. Whitaker looked at him without blinking. The only thing ruining this club's reputation right now is you, Richard. He turned to the 2 board members. Effective immediately, Richard Langford is no longer the manager of this club. He will be given 2 weeks' severance. After that, his employment here is terminated. Langford's face went pale. You can't be serious. I am, Whitaker said. And if you make any trouble on your way out, I'll make sure every club in the state knows exactly how you treated your staff. Langford stood there for a few seconds, breathing hard. Then he grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the room without looking at anyone. The door slammed behind him. Whitaker looked at Marcus again. You don't have to answer right now, he said. Take a few days. Talk to your family. But the offer is real. Marcus nodded slowly. He still hadn't spoken a single word since he sat down. As he walked out of the clubhouse 20 minutes later, his mind was spinning. He got into his old car and sat there for a while, without starting the engine. Then he took out his phone and called his grandmother. She answered on the second ring. Grandma? Marcus's voice cracked a little. Something happened today. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, is it good or bad? Marcus looked out at the golf course through his windshield. I think, he said slowly. It might finally be good. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He lay in bed for hours, thinking about everything that had happened in the last few weeks. The keys in the fountain, Langford's threats, the meeting in the conference room, and Whitaker's offer. It all felt like a dream, a strange, heavy dream that had suddenly turned into something he never expected. The next morning, he sat with his grandmother at the kitchen table. Eleanor was drinking her tea slowly, her hands wrapped around the warm cup. "So," she said, "what are you going to do?" Marcus looked at her for a long time. "I think I'm going to take the job," he said quietly. Eleanor smiled. It was a small, tired smile, but her eyes were shining. "I knew you would," she said. "You were never meant to stay hidden, Marcus. Your mother always said that. Even when you were little, she knew you had something special." Marcus looked down at the table. "I gave up coaching because of you," he said. "Because we needed money. Because you were sick." Eleanor reached across the table and held his hand. "And I will always be grateful for that," she said. "But you can't keep sacrificing your life for me forever. I'm old, baby. I've lived my life. Now it's your turn." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "What if I fail?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. "You won't," she said. "Because this time, you're not doing it alone." 2 weeks later, Marcus started his new job as an assistant golf coach at Willowbrook Country Club. On his first day, he wore a clean polo shirt with the club logo instead of the valet uniform. Tyler Brooks was one of the first people to come and shake his hand. "Welcome to the real job," Tyler said with a smile. Some of the older members looked surprised when they saw Marcus on the practice range teaching juniors. A few even complained quietly, but Harlan Whitaker made it very clear. Marcus Reed was now part of the coaching team, and anyone who had a problem with it could take it up with him directly. Richard Langford was gone. He had left the club without saying goodbye to anyone. Some staff said he had already found another manager job at a smaller club across town. Others said he was still angry and telling people that Whitaker had made a mistake. Marcus didn't care either way. Every evening, he still went home to his grandmother. He cooked for her, helped her with her medicine, and sat with her in the living room like he always did. But something inside him had changed. He walked a little taller now. He smiled more easily. One evening, almost a month after he started his new job, Marcus was sitting with Eleanor on the front porch. The sun was going down, and the air was cool. "You know," Eleanor said softly, "your mother would be so proud of you right now." Marcus looked at her. "I wish I could remember her better," he said. Eleanor smiled. "You don't need to remember her face to carry her with you," she said. "She gave you that talent, and now you're finally using it." Marcus was quiet for a while. Then he asked the question he had been holding in for weeks. "Grandma, do you think I deserve this?" Eleanor turned to him and looked him straight in the eyes. "Marcus," she said, "you spent years parking cars and carrying bags while keeping your head down. You let people treat you like you were nothing, and you did it all so I could stay in this house and take my medicine. If anyone in this world deserves a second chance, it's you." She reached over and squeezed his hand. "Now go out there and coach like you were born to do it." Marcus didn't say anything. He just nodded and looked out at the street as the sky turned orange. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt like he was finally living. 1 year later, Marcus was standing on the practice range at Willowbrook Country Club, watching a 14-year-old girl hit balls. She had improved a lot in the last few months. Her swing was smoother, and her confidence was growing. "Keep your head still on the backswing," Marcus said gently. "You're doing great." The girl smiled and nodded. From the edge of the range, Harlan Whitaker stood watching with his arms crossed. He had a small smile on his face. Tyler Brooks walked up beside him. "You made the right call," Tyler said. Whitaker nodded. "I know." Marcus didn't see them watching. He was too focused on the young player in front of him. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about survival. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. "Now, let me ask you something. If you were Marcus, and someone threw your keys in the fountain in front of everyone, would you have stayed quiet like he did? Or would you have fought back earlier? Tell me in the comments what you would have done. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes the people we overlook the most are the ones carrying the biggest strength inside, them. Thank you for watching.